Enkidu. Enkidu, Irukidu, class name False Lancer, Nisransa, is the false Lancer class servant summoned by the wolf in the True and False Holy Grail Wars of Fate/Strange Fake. Lancer is one of the servants summoned by Ritsuka Fujimaru in the Grand Orders of Fate/Grand Order. The only friend of Gilgamesh. Born from a clod of earth, Enkidu was clay shaped by hands of the gods, their father the king of gods, Anu, and their mother the goddess of creation, Aruru. They were neither male nor female, but merely a monster made of mud that descended onto the earth and awoke in the wilderness. They opened their eyelids in response to a voice calling to them from afar, taking in the sight of the expanses of land and sky and the towering city in the distance. The voice was unknown to Enkidu, but it was neither the maternal hand or the paternal rebuke. Though Enkidu was given superb power, their parents were unable to give Enkidu a soul. They had no intellect after awakening, so their existence for years afterward consisted of rushing through the wilderness with the animals. Though Enkidu had a purpose, given the task of being the chains to return the keystone, Gilgamesh, back under control of the gods, without a soul they could only live like a feral animal. Lacking the will of a human, Enkidu's happiness came from being free in the wild, neither perfect nor flawed. They would still stop to look at the city occasionally, hearing the voice that was neither their father's nor mother's calling to them from beyond the wilds. Enkidu was a formless clump of mud, so they were told to seek out a complete human to copy its form to be able to interact with humans. Enkidu was directed to find Huwawa, who the gods had created as their image of a complete human. In truth, Huwawa had been formed from thousands of human souls forcefully fused together. Enkidu did as instructed, becoming Huwawa's friend while they still lived in the wild. Enkidu even says Huwawa raised them. They befriended the only lucid soul among Huwawa's composites, a little girl. Enkidu made Huwawa a flower crown for her to wear. Enkidu wanted to save the souls comprising Huwawa, but didn't know how. Eventually, Enkidu and Huwawa parted ways. Anu brought Enkidu a woman, the sacred prostitute Shamhat, after despairing over their lack of rational thought. The asexual lump of clay fell for the beauty of the woman, which transcended the bound between man and woman, and they spent 6 days and 7 nights together. The mud puppet, ignorant of mankind, slowly allowed their form to approximate that of a human, which seemed to become that of the beautiful harlot sharing their food and bed with them, as if attempting to assume her beauty. Enkidu made her paradoxical beauty their own, losing much of their strength and divinity, though still retaining levels of both far above that of humanity, in exchange for wisdom and reason. They had never looked in a mirror, so the humanoid form became a good instructor for Enkidu to learn about themselves. They acquired knowledge and rational thought, all the truths of heaven and earth. Filled with the soul and needed to fulfill their task, Enkidu spoke their name for the first time and the world became something extremely simple in that instant. Finally recognizing their role and task, imposing the wrath of the gods and divine judgment upon a fellow puppet of the gods, Enkidu decided to seek out the arrogant Gilgamesh. The one they found was still a child, so Enkidu had to wait until Gilgamesh reached adulthood in order to fight and reprimand him as an equal. They watched the city while waiting, hearing the familiar voice from within. While watching Gilgamesh grow by the day, Enkidu found that the king's fair nature confused them and made them question the god's judgment. Soon, and though they understood the reason behind it, Enkidu came to realize the gods were correct, however, as Gilgamesh grew and became a tyrant. Understanding that Gilgamesh's arrogance stemmed from his solitude, Enkidu sought to reprimand him, but did not state the real reason to avoid hurting his pride. They met Gilgamesh in front of the temple of Uruk, and both clashed in a fierce battle that lasted for several days. Gilgamesh was angered by a clod of mud being equal to him, humiliated that he had to use his treasures. He soon came to enjoy the battle, however, and brought his weapons out without regret. After fierce fighting that left them both spent, each warrior collapsed to the ground without consideration for the location. Gilgamesh did so laughing, noting that there could be no winner without 2 corpses, and Enkidu fell in imitation of him, like a mirror. Praising each other's valor, they became peerless friends who went on to have many adventures. One of Enkidu's few achievements of the time was to have Gilgamesh make use of his treasures in battle. They combined their strength to defeat the guardian of the forest and beast of the gods, Enkidu's old friend Huwawa, for the reason of protecting Uruk rather than anything to do with the gods. In the time since Enkidu and Huwawa had been apart, Huwawa had gone mad and become a monster screaming in thousands of voices who could not understand why they suffered so. Enkidu commented that the people were suffering under them, so they questioned the point of such an action. Enkidu came to understand Gilgamesh's path at that point, that the king would observe humanity's future from his solidarity. After killing Huowa, Enkidu left another circlet of flowers behind for their friend. Enkidu attempted to declare that they were a tool for Gilgamesh's use, claiming that they would stand by his side until the end of the world. Gilgamesh instead called them a fool, telling Enkidu that those who live together, talk together, and fight together are neither people nor tools, but what is called a friend. Obtaining that word was precious to Enkidu, and it was in that moment that it acquired a self in the true sense of the word. Afterward, Ishtar proposed to Gilgamesh, but he rejected her. Angered by his insults, she begged Anu to release the bull of heaven to punish them. After working together to destroy it, Ishtar requested they be put to death for slaying a beast of the gods. Her request was granted, and Enkidu, created by the gods, was unable to defy the decree. Over time, they slowly weakened and returned to clay, as Gilgamesh desperately held on to the crumbling clod in his arms. Gilgamesh was angered, exclaiming that he should have been punished instead, but Enkidu reiterated that they were only one of the numerous weapons in the king's collection. There would be no need to grieve, because he would find countless greater treasures, so there was no worth left in Enkidu to deserve any tears from the king. Enkidu believed that Gilgamesh was a hero who had a soul and free will since the beginning, who had true life and worth unlike their own expendable self. They always yearned for that and hated that they were such different beings despite being created by the same father. Gilgamesh exclaimed that Enkidu did have worth, declaring, "In all this world, only one shall be my friend. Thus not for all eternity shall his worth ever change." As the rain gradually let up, Enkidu returned to their original state, naught but a clod of earth in the wilderness, leaving behind nothing but the thunderous cry of the king. The rest of Gilgamesh's lifetime afterward showed the large shadow cast over him from losing the sole person who understood him. Personality. Enkidu's flesh was designed so that their entire personality would be inscribed into the body itself. As such, even if a different soul inhabited their corpse, it would be recorded by the world as one of the paths a body created by the gods took. A path, or perhaps circuit, is a better term. Enkidu originally didn't have a personality until he bonded with other humans and Gilgamesh himself. Therefore, what was recorded onto the throne of heroes was not his soul, but his physical body. Lancer seems to greatly appreciate nature, and often finds it as a relief that the world is still beautiful as ever even after being covered by cities like Uruk. They are happy to sit while their master is resting and simply allow themselves to enjoy the magnificent natural landscape and the song of the river. They enjoyed running in the wild during their days as a beast, with only the voice of Gilgamesh drawing them towards Uruk. Even when dealing with the person who hurt their master, Enkidu speaks serenely in a polite manner without any provocation. They follow their master's wishes exactly without issue, leaving the Magus to his own devices. At the final jeering from the Magus calling their master a mongrel, Lancer simply turns their head and looks at the Magus with eyes saturated with rejection. They instantly dissolve the malice in their eyes upon the Magus' departure, and focus on their master afterward. Much like Gilgamesh, Lancer regards their friendship highly. They held that they were a weapon in life, and that their fate was to be supplanted by the next. Any worth or mystery was to be limited only to Enkidu's age, but Gilgamesh changed those thoughts. Gilgamesh accepted a penalty of a fate of solitude thereafter, but granted Enkidu with a soul with his words. Enkidu believes that they sinned in knowing Gilgamesh, whose greatest sincerity was to remain aloof without acknowledging the strong or the weak, but in the end, Enkidu ended up leaving a lasting mar upon that integrity. Enkidu is extremely surprised upon learning Gilgamesh has been summoned, and initially cannot even believe in such a turn of fate. After calmly opening their eyes, slowly standing up, and having a brief moment of silence, a feeling of confusion, frustration, and finally overwhelming joy rampages through their chest. Enkidu believes it is destiny that they will battle once again in the Holy Grail War, and is confident that the tapestry woven between them and their king would not tear just because a fight or two. Even after 1,000 melees together, their bond would remain just as strong as ever. If you tell me to fight, I'll fight. After all, it is not like I hate fighting. Lancer. Introverted, active and self-assured. Usually they just loiter like a beautiful flower, but, once it gets on the move, it becomes a frightening active monster that doesn't wait, has no mercy and shows no self-restraint. Since they are a life form born from the earth, Enkidu also finds humans appealing. But, because humans think of themselves as beings apart from nature due to their intelligence, they rank low as protection targets. Enkidu feels that animals and plants are existences closer to itself and will mostly take action in order to protect them, rather than humans. That being said, since it had great curiosity, intellectual craving, to begin with, Enkidu regards conversations with humans as an enjoyment. if said character has an appealing personality, a totalitarian brimming with a philanthropic mentality, but still someone who thinks of themselves foremost, Enkidu will demonstrate respect and admiration from the bottom of its heart, feeling joy and support them as a friend. In the April Fool art by Ryo, they're depicted topless with nothing to obscure their chest. Abilities. Enkidu is the strongest god-made human, into which Anu, the king of the gods, and Aruru, the goddess of creation, poured all their magical energy. Enkidu is an autonomous weapon similar in nature to an AI, given the blood of the gods much like Gilgamesh, and was Uruk's greatest weapon. Although Enkidu's parents granted it incredible power, they couldn't breathe a soul into it, and thus, Enkidu initially had no rationality. For years after they awoke, they were simply a creature that ran through the fields with wild beasts. It had power that surpassed human understanding, and when it was enraged, it was said to be mightier than even Gilgamesh. Anu, who lamented Enkidu's lack of human reason, supplied them with a woman, the sacred prostitute Shamhat. As they spent 6 days and 7 nights together, sharing meals and sharing bed, Enkidu learned about knowledge and logic, and it was taught the ways of heaven and earth. In exchange for gaining reason in a human form, Enkidu lost much of its strength and divinity. However, even in this state, its power still far exceeded that of man, and was great enough to fight Gilgamesh to a stalemate. Sage King Gilgamesh states that Kingu may be stronger than a live Enkidu. During the false Holy Grail War, a mage attempted to break the rules of the system by summoning a being that transcends every heroic spirit. In order to defeat heroes who are said to be kings, he had planned to summon a being that exceeds every single one of them, who has such power as to be called a god. He wanted to summon a being more ancient than the first hero, one of those of Egypt who became gods. However, even the power of the command spells, combined with the latent power of Snowfield, wouldn't suffice to call forth a being as powerful as a god without first violating a few strictures. Badly for him, the chimera that he had prepared as a catalyst gained the command spells instead of him, and miraculously summoned Enkidu as a lancer. Faldeus Dialen states that summoning Enkidu as a servant is unspeakable, as to begin with, Enkidu was never so much a hero, as it was a noble phantasm of the gods themselves. He claims that had the mage managed to summon Enkidu as Berserker, he very well might have gained the power of a god that he so desired. Although the Holy Grail War system shouldn't allow for that sort of thing, in the false Holy Grail War where there are anomalous happenings everywhere, it shouldn't be out of the realm of possibility. The reason Enkidu can manifest as a Lancer-class servant is their noble phantasm Enuma Elish, a weapon designed to pierce Gilgamesh's hostility and return the chisel to God's own hands. In this form, Enkidu's power is equal to that of Gilgamesh during his prime. Due to that, Enkidu has been recognized as one of the strongest heroes in human history. Just fighting them for a few minutes was enough to convince Richard I that Enkidu was exceptional even among heroic spirits, himself included. After first meeting Gilgamesh, Richard noted that the strength of his Saint Graph rivaled that of Enkidu's, and that he could tell at a glance that he had no chance of winning if they fought head-on. However, it should be noted that Richard was only wielding a dull-bladed ornamental sword that he had borrowed from Sigma's base of operations at the time. Combat. Enkidu's combat strength is roughly equal to that of the king of heroes Gilgamesh at his golden age. Back when they were alive, their battle lasted 3 days and 3 nights. Enkidu, who could freely transform into all of creation, forced Gilgamesh to muster all of the power he could handle to fight back. When Gilgamesh finally emptied his whole treasury, and Enkidu had lost 90% of his clay, the two of them only had one move left. It was in this moment that both of them agreed to stop fighting, and Gilgamesh claimed that they would have both died if they had continued. On the other hand, Enkidu states that Gilgamesh may be stronger than them, since their battle wasn't settled. Enkidu is able to leap and sprint great distances. During the false Holy Grail War, all of Enkidu's parameters are a rank by default, surpassing even Heracles, Berserker, during the 5th and Karna. However, by the start of the incident, Enkidu's total stat points were hovering at a little less than all as, due to their master, the Silver Wolf, being extremely wounded. Only once it completely recovers will Enkidu's physical attributes be at their full capacity. Even in this weakened state, Enkidu is able to fight Gilgamesh on equal footing, who was receiving magical energy not only from Tine Chelk, but the ley lines as well. Gilgamesh claims that if their battle hadn't been interrupted by Pale Rider, they would have again gone on for 3 days and 3 nights. When Richard I asked Enkidu to join forces with him, Enkidu decided to test his strength in a brief fight. During this battle, none of them were fighting seriously, with Richard not even wielding his sword or wearing his armor. In fact, he tried to fight Enkidu at the start by combining boxing techniques he had learned by watching a movie earlier that day. Enkidu fired innumerable weapons, which Richard evaded while closing in on them and unleashing sharp punches. There is an expression, lightning quick. It is normally intended metaphorically, but the scene that burned itself into Ayaka's eyes in that instant was so intense that it really did remind her of flashes of lightning. Although Richard had a slight edge in actual speed, thanks to one of his friends supporting him with reinforcement magecraft, Enkidu surpassed him in immediate physical strength. Due to this, Enkidu could deaden his speed to the extent that they could knock his blows aside with perfect timing. Being impressed by Richard's superior speed, Enkidu decides to fight him more seriously, as a member of the Lancer class. By using their transfiguration skill to lower his endurance and mana parameters by 1 rank each and boost his agility, Enkidu became faster than before. Richard had claimed the day before that false assassin was the first person he had seen with lighter foot than Loxley. Ayaka did not know much about lightness of foot, but when it came to pure, instantaneous speed, she suspected that Enkidu now outpaced even the woman in black. The two fighters were now equals in speed, but, as Lancer had not lowered his strength, his deft strikes were gradually pushing back Saber's rapid blows. Realizing that boxing wouldn't be enough, Richard picked up a branch from the floor, and fired Excalibur with it, wiping out the myriad of weapons hurtling toward him in an instant. It is here that their battle ends, with Enkidu regarding Richard as a strong opponent. Richard, on the other hand, states that Enkidu had not been using even half of their real strength. Because Enkidu is a weapon meant to be used as a trump card against Gilgamesh, they state that they stand a chance at fighting Nebuchadnezzar 2.5. Although the fake king regards Enkidu as his only worthy opponent, Enkidu alone wouldn't be able to beat him, and thus, they ask Chaldea's servants for their support. While Enkidu suppresses his powers, Larva Tiamat, Mash Kirilite, Lancelot, Sakata Kintoki, and Tamamonome manage to defeat him, not without taking an unspecified amount of damage. Gilgamesh knows the fact that Enkidu has no weakness as well. If there is one exception, it would be the death that hounded him, ruin itself, none other than the curse of death that the gods placed on it back when it was alive for helping Gilgamesh slay the Bull of Heaven. This is the reason as to why Enkidu describes Pale Rider as their natural enemy. They mention to Tyne that they possess the ability to forcibly open the gate of Babylon, should the need arise, such as when Gilgamesh is afflicted by poison. It is noted that when Enkidu sings, the landscape resonates to their song, and the entire land of Snowfield sings with them. Even right after being summoned, their tremendous roar is described as having the power to shake both heaven and earth. It was like the first cry of a newborn, and at the same time, it was almost certainly the voice of a stupendously powerful servant. Skills. Class skills. Magic resistance, rank. Because of the skill transfiguration, the rank of this skill fluctuates accordingly. Personal skills. Transfiguration, a rank. Enkidu does not possess normal parameters, instead of possessing the transfiguration skill as an inherent characteristic of an automatic doll. A unique skill that allows Enkidu to allotted their parameters, strength, endurance, agility, mana and luck, excluding noble phantasm, from a set pool of points according to the situation. The higher the rank, the greater the pool. Since Enkidu has this skill ranked A, all their parameters are a rank by default. The cost, however, rises when bringing a parameter from A rank to A+, which requires a 2 rank drop in another parameter, or a 1 rank drop in 2 parameters, to achieve. For their summoning in Fate/Grand Order, they at times make STR into a rank, and at times make END into a rank. However, because the conversion limits of parameters is set in stone, Enkidu cannot make all parameters into a rank. Enkidu possesses a comprehensive value of 30, and each parameter consumes the respective values, A, 7, B, 6, C, 5, D, 4, 3. The maximum value is dependent on the master Enkidu has. If they were summoned by the world and the earth was their master, then all of Enkidu's parameters would be set to a rank and they would be given an additional 30 points to spend freely. With these extra points, Enkidu would be able to reach A+ in all parameters. This is an ability that can also be achieved by a certain true ancestor princess. Presence Detection, AA++ rank. Enkidu boasts the highest rank of Presence Detection, a subsystem that allows him to become one with the world and identify anything out of place at long range. Via the earth, is able to sense the presence of things at long range. In close range, an equal or lower rank of Presence Concealment can be nullified. Enkidu is unable to pinpoint the exact location of objects infused with their own magical energy. This can result in the object completely concealing the presence of other entities in the surrounding area. In the Grand Orders, after Enkidu travels to the aftermath of the Babylonia singularity and they absorb a remnant of the chains formed from Kingu's Enuma Elish, they upgrade themselves. By synchronizing with the chain and incorporating it back to their spirit origin, a part of Kingu's own spirit origin also came flowing into Enkidu, who gained their memories. This results in the quality of his spirit origin changing, due to his connection to the world being slightly increased. In this state, Enkidu is now able to further integrate themselves into anything connected to Chaldea's world. Now they can melt their very existence into the world. Even if for an instant, they may be able to evade an enemy's attacks. Whether they can actually use it would probably depend on how much his spirit origin has bonded with Chaldea. Normally, this skill is ranked A+, however, in Fate/Grand Order Material 4 it is ranked down to A. In-game, it becomes A++ after completing his interlude. Perfect form, a rank by making use of the magical energy of the land, it restores itself to its former shape. So long there is a supply of magic energy from the land, Enkidu's body, which was produced from the clay of the Age of Gods, will never collapse. A powerful regeneration restoration ability that is completely unprecedented. However, the soul is a different matter. Noble Phantasms. Age of Babylon. Enkidu has a noble phantasm known as Age of Babylon. With it, Enkidu is able to create weapons, such as swords, spears, and chains from the ground using clay. Each of these weapons represents the pinnacle of human craftsmanship. Because Enkidu was made from clay by the gods, they lack a gender or fixed form. They can change shape at will, but as creation of the gods is considered complete from birth and neither grew or evolved unlike Gilgamesh. Enkidu generally uses their androgynous appearance despite being able to take different forms as needed. They can take the form of a spear, axe, shield, or beast should the need arise, each the pinnacle of human craftsmanship, with this ability allowing Enkidu to last several days in battle against Gilgamesh and the Gate of Babylon. Though it required using 90% of the clay making up their body, leaving Enkidu at the point of being unable to even form clothing, the puppets still forced Gilgamesh to empty his vault. During their fight in the true Holy Grail War, Gilgamesh got to fire hundreds, maybe thousands, of noble phantasms, with Enkidu equally matching him blow for blow. Enuma Elish. Enkidu's trump card is their noble phantasm Enuma Elish, which transforms its own body into a divine construct, to fire a giant amount of energy that pierces and binds the opponent in one hit. Since Enkidu draws its power from the counterforce to power this attack, its power is increased in response to things that threaten the destruction of the planet or humanity. This function is designed to counter threats such as Kiera Sessioin, Alter Ego. In fact, if the two of them were to be summoned in Chaldea at the same time, the collateral damage of their fight would result in the destruction of Chaldea's facilities. During Enkidu's first fight with Gilgamesh in the False Holy Grail War, Enkidu used this noble phantasm to oppose the King of Heroes' own Enuma Elish. When Enkidu was charging this attack, Tyne Chelk said that it was as if the planet itself, Gaia, had come into that location, and funneled a gigantic amount of magical energy into it to oppose Gilgamesh's power to destroy the world. It was at that moment that Tyne understood that the heroic spirit fighting Gilgamesh in the southern desert was at least as powerful as he was, a being outside the rules of the game. During their clash, the energies of the two noble phantasms cancelled each other out, and dispersed into the surroundings. When Gilgamesh fired Ea a second time, now strengthened by the power of the noble phantasms of Gate of Babylon, him and Enkidu clashed with greater power than before. The two Enuma Elish cancelled each other once more, turning part of the desert to glass and leaving a massive crater in its wake. In the distant past, the sacred prostitute that watched Gilgamesh and Enkidu clash said, "I felt as if the world was born 7 times, and destroyed 7 times. Since Enkidu notes that as a servant summoned in modern day, Gilgamesh's Enuma Elish lacked the sheer magnitude it had during the Age of Gods, this implies that Enkidu's output when he was alive was also considerably higher. According to Gilgamesh, Kingu's own version of Enuma Elish, which momentarily restrained Tiamat before she broke them freeing herself in the process, is a feat equal to any of Enkidu's life. Other capabilities. Enkidu has a connection with nature and can speak in an animal language, Kimona no Kotoba, that allows them to understand, communicate with, translate the words of their master and other animals. Even though the wolf is not capable of thought in the sense of humans, Lancer is able to communicate that the wolf bears no malice towards its creator. Enkidu possesses the ability to act as a wish granter in the Babylonia singularity. Kingu. Kingu, class name Lancer, Ransa, is a Lancer class servant appearing as an antagonist in the Grand Orders of Fate/Grand Order. They later become an Avenger class servant. Identity. said to be a child of Tiamat, but they are not a reincarnation of the god slain by Marduk. They believe themselves to be the start of a new humanity created by their mother, but they later learn they are not truly one of her children. They are a soul that has been placed into the body of the deceased Enkidu and cannot hear Tiamat's voice like her real children. Appearance. Enkidu's appearance is something modeled after the sacred prostitute Shamhat out of respect. Lancer is able to take a myriad of forms, but their usual form is that of a 16-year-old androgynous person with long, beautiful hair that shimmers with a light green color. They were summoned only wearing a plain tunic, so they seem rather unremarkable compared to those normally called heroic spirits. Enkidu is not summoned with any items, and their clothing does not look valuable in any way. While heroes are not determined by their wealth, being summoned completely barehanded is abnormal. It is hard to tell if Enkidu is a man or woman at first glance. Their face retains vaguely childlike features that are able to be interpreted as that of either gender. Their lustrous skin and soft features are reminiscent of a woman, but their loose tunic further obscures their sex by hiding their physique, making it impossible to see their chest and hips, and making it difficult to discern if they are even actually human. They have firm and taut limbs with rough hands and feet like those of men, and their body seems like a coiled spring ready to rocket forth. With an androgynous and neutral voice, Enkidu's face can be called beautiful and elegant despite their gender, but at the same time gives off a strange and uncomfortable atmosphere. While their face looks human, it also appears inhuman due to the fact that it looks too perfect. While the feeling cannot be put into words and it is not immediately apparent to the eye, Enkidu's form evokes a similar feeling in the observer as a mannequin or puppets constructed by magi. Their nature becomes less apparent the more one looks upon them, but their beauty as a being of perfect harmony is undeniable. They are a paradoxical being that possesses the impurity characteristic of mankind and the immaculate perfection inherent to nature. Defying classification as man or woman, human or beast, god or demon, their body is like the velvety boughs wrapping the statue of Venus. Abilities. Using the King of Magecraft Holy Grail as a magical reactor core, Kingu stands next to the strongest heroes in human history. Upon witnessing them flying at 500 km per hour with the mana concentration of the Age of Gods, Gilgamesh compliments them for their flying speed, claiming that it was impressive even by his standards and that they may have been even stronger than the original Enkidu, a heroic spirit whose combat strength is roughly the same as that of Gilgamesh during his prime. As such, they clearly have the upper hand against the Sage King Gilgamesh. When fighting Mash and Anna, their magical energy already rivals that of a demon god pillar. He is also able to fight on par with a playful Quetzalcoatl. Skills. Possessing Enkidu's corpse, Kingu has access to all their powers. Transfiguration. Rank a unique skill in which parameter values are allotted in accordance to the situation from a prescribed comprehensive value. Enkidu's greatest feature. The higher the rank, the higher the comprehensive value becomes. With this skill, its user is able to increase the rank of their parameters. However, because the conversion limits of parameters are set in stone, it cannot make all parameters into a rank. Enkidu possesses a comprehensive value of 30, and each parameter consumes the respective values, A, 7, B, 6, C, 5, D, 4, 3. It is unknown how many points Kingu has access to. Furthermore, Kingu is able to modify their own spirit origin, changing their class from Lancer to Avenger. Presence detection. Rank. It is possible to sense presences from long distances by using the land as a medium. Kingu's mastery over this skill is slightly higher than Enkidu's, as they are able to melt their very existence into the world. Even if for an instant, Kingu may be able to evade an enemy's attacks. Perfect form. Rank. By making use of the magical energy of the land, it restores itself to its former shape. So long as there is a supply of magic energy from the land, Enkidu's body, which was produced from the clay of the Age of Gods, will never collapse. This ability is a powerful form of regeneration and restoration that is completely unprecedented. The soul, however, is a different matter. Noble phantasms. Having all of Enkidu's powers, Kingu can also endlessly create powerful weapons from the ground, like spears and chains, and fire them thanks to Age of Babylon. As such, his fighting style is identical to that of the legendary King of Heroes. His precision with this noble phantasm is extremely high, as shown when he killed 100 demonic beasts at once while keeping collateral damage at a minimum, whereas Mash had claimed destroying them with a single attack would be impossible without an anti-army noble phantasm. Furthermore, Kingu is capable of destroying 6,000 Bel Lamu out of 8,000 with a single assault. Their strongest noble phantasms are Enuma Elish and Namu Duranki, which when used in Enkidu's body, is identical to their version of Enuma Elish. With it, Kingu is able to momentarily restrain Tiamat's Titan form. Even though Tiamat freed herself by breaking the chains, Gilgamesh considers this feat equal to any of his previous life.
If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.